Now, it's been one of the big talking points this week, the fallout from the Aussie NBA star Ben Simmons' ill-fated visit to Crown Casino. What to make of that in Melbourne, prompting him to initially post this online.
The only guy who doesn't get checked to go in the casino is this guy.
Oh, I guess, no.
I get checked. Mike gets checked.
I get checked.
And Taj gets checked.
Not me.
Thank you, Crown Casino. Damn. And they didn't let me in, or him.
That's crazy.
Or this guy. Wow.
Even after it was taken down, debate raged about that response there from Simmons, especially when it emerged he was on a paid gig from Tourism Australia, given about $50,000 to make regular posts on his travels in Victoria, back to his huge audience back in the United States.
Yeah, I don't think Tourism Victoria were expecting that. Now, joining us to discuss the ins and outs of celebrity endorsements and just what can go right and wrong are our Friday Confab's filmmaker and journalist Santilla Chingaipe and SBS World News presenter and business reporter Ricardo Gonçalves, who joins us from Sydney. Good morning to both of you. And a reminder, of course, we are live right now on Facebook and YouTube, and we'd love to hear your comments if you want to join in. Santilla, good morning.
Good morning.
First of all, let's start with sort of the substance of it. Did it appear to you to be a case of racial profiling?
Possibly, and it was interesting because it happened in a week where I was also a victim to racial profiling.
You were?
I have been, yeah.
Where was that?
So, first incident happened on Tuesday. I've been producing on a series, and we were on a shoot, and we'd stopped by a supermarket in one of the outer suburbs, and I jumped into the supermarket to sort of get water, you know, because we were dehydrated. And when I was walking out, you know, someone sort of stopped me because they thought I'd stolen money, and so I had to call my co-producer who came in.
Stolen money from where?
From the checkout when I was sort of paying for it and I was leaving.
Oh, you mean the self-serve?
Pretty much.
Right, yeah.
And then I had to call my co-producer because they had to go to the back to check the CCTV footage, and it was and then he had to intervene. And then yesterday.
How long were you there?
Oh gosh, probably about 15 minutes.
Right.
Because they had to go and check all the camera footage. And then yesterday, when I was so I work for a bunch of different institutions, and this particular one, it's rather large, and I don't go in very often, but I didn't have my pass with me, and as I was going in, one of my colleagues sort of swiped to let me in, and someone just from within the building walked out of the lift, and he just sort of said to me, "Are you supposed to be here?" And I was like, "Yep, I'm, you know, a staff member, and I've got my pass with me." And he just started questioning whether or not I should be in.
Even though you had a pass?
Even though I had a pass, and I had to file a report, and I complained. Yeah, and I was fortunate in that instance because I actually had a witness who saw it, who was able to verify what I said. But a lot was going through my head where I was like, am I, you know, like, because you try to rationalise what's going on because you're going, hang on.
Am I overreacting?
Am I overreacting? Did this really happen? But then, you know, people's prejudices show up in very, very interesting ways.
So you see something like that happen to Simmons, you think, yeah, that's
absolutely,
that could be the
just because
case,
it's happened to me so many times. Like, I've stopped counting. You know, in this week alone, I've had like 2 instances.
Sorry that happens to you.
We're really sorry. Ricardo, we're going to get to the whole sort of complexity of, you know, what a rogue celebrity can and might do with your money, your public money, when you give it to them. But has something similar happened to you?
In terms of racial profiling or celebrity? Listen, yes and no. I think the most common thing, and SBS has done programs on it too, is the whole question, you've got your name, Ricardo, is a bit, it's not that unusual, but
no,
I'll say it's unusual. But where are you from? And I'll say, I'm from Wollongong, right? But where do you really come from? Port Kembla, you know. So I get that sort of thing, but for me, not necessarily, not so much.
What was your reaction to Ben Simmons posting that initial video at Crown Casino?
Well, I think that's his social media. I think people do what they want to do on social media. They often forget if they've got an association with a brand or that sort of thing. But listen, if Tourism Victoria or whoever organised that wants to get some sort of celebrity endorsement, they got people talking about Melbourne, whether it was good or bad. He's got 4.4 million followers on Instagram. I've only got 2,500 at Business Ricardo, if you want to follow. But what's interesting, though, is that, you know, any post he makes gets some good interaction and some good engagement. So there's one of him crossing the Yarra River. He's got a tag on there saying "Good to be home." You know, was that paid? We don't know because there was no hashtag ad or that sort of thing on there.
Right.
But there was 233,000 likes on it. Now I know that Instagram removed all the likes from mobile devices in Australia, so in theory you're not meant to know how many likes. However, there's a workaround. If you use Instagram on your desktop, you can still see how many likes per post.
Oh, I did not know that. Okay, thank you.
Santella, what do you think? Is this smart advertising or a waste of public money?
Well, I don't really know, because I'm sort of sitting on the fence with this whole Ben Simmons debate, because I'm sort of like, I'm interested by how people are outraged that he even, you know, potentially brought up the idea of racially being profiled, and this idea that it possibly couldn't have happened, and it gives, you know, Victoria a really bad look, or it gives Australia a really bad look, and it's like, well, he's starting a conversation, and I think we do need to be talking about racism, you know, whether or not, you know, we want to believe his claims, you know, they're not unfounded. I mean, you know, you just have to talk to a lot of people of colour in this country. You have to talk to Indigenous Australians to really get a sense of the fact that racism is well and truly alive, and the fact that, you know, he felt that way, and you know, the justifications I think that the casino made about denying him entry were that at another entrance he was allowed to get in, whereas at the first entrance he was denied, as though, you know, that's just how racism works. And I think we just need to really move beyond this very simplistic understanding of what racism is. I think we get really caught up in, you know, the overt, and that racism is, you know, it means that you're a bad person or you're bad intentioned. But in actual fact, you know, when you speak to academics around this area, you know, racism manifests in other ways. It's not just the overt stuff that we're familiar with, but unconscious bias, and you know, and it also shows up in other forms as well. Institutional racism is a big part of that, which you can clearly see in data.
Does it concern you that people are questioning it? And
it does.
The debate that followed.
It does, because it's the people that are questioning are the people that actually don't experience racism firsthand. And again, when I talk about racism, I'm not just talking about the ideas that we associate with racism, which is the lynchings and all that sort of stuff, or calling someone the N-word, but I'm talking about the other ways that it shows up, unconscious bias through institutional racism, and it has clear impacts on people's lives.
Some comments rolling in this morning are on the idea of just, you know, how loose and wild it can get with celebrities if you're going to give them some public money in order to go out and endorse life for you. Greg says 50k to reach millions of followers is cheap, which I think picks up your point there, Ricardo, but he should be contractually bound to not criticise places while he's here. Ricardo, you just can't do that, can you? If you're gonna ride the back of that tiger, you're going to accept where it goes.
And sometimes things happen out of your control. So there was that the whole Modern Family TV show. They were brought to Australia. They filmed a couple of episodes here. I think Qantas was involved, Tourism Australia. So there was some good publicity about, you know, Australia. These stars tweeted and posted some photos on Instagram about how amazing Australia is. However, the headlines that went around the world was that of when one of the stars was groped by a fan during a photograph. So they're the headlines that went around the world instead. But of course, there are some good endorsements. There are some bad ones. Some of my favourite bad ones. I really want to talk about my favourite family in the whole world. That's the Kardashian family. They're the masters of celebrity endorsement, right? But more recently, Kendall Jenner. So that's the second last one in that whole family.
Okay.
She was associated with Pepsi. Did
That's
a TV
right.
commercial where in the commercial she played a model, ran out onto the street where there was a street protest movement. She went to the front of that protest, handed the police officers in line there a can of Pepsi, and was seen to be a peacemaker. However, that was very reminiscent of the Black Lives Matter movement, and so she was pretty much caned over that. Pepsi also wasn't a good look. Still, people spoke about it. Whether or not it was good or bad for Kendall Jenner, well, she then got an ambassadorship with Adidas anyway. And then a couple of my other favourite ones, you know, with sport, Lance Armstrong and Nike. Once the doping scandal came ahead, Nike cut the contract with Lance and also removed Lance's name from a Nike fitness centre. And in Australia, Of course, you've got Shane Warne, who was the face of Nicorette for a while, and then was seen smoking just a bit of time after that ambassadorship
right.
also.
Thanks for reminding us about that one. Hey, by the way, I think Ben Simmons might have dated one of the Kardashians. That's my extent of my knowledge there.
I think it's probably mandatory at some point.
Ben Simmons has been a big backer of the Adam Goods film. That might play out to an even broader audience now because they're looking at a release in the United States for that. How positive would that be to have that film go around the world?
I think it'd be amazing. I mean, I went to see the Australian Dream at MIF, and I was there at the premiere, and Ben was there, and it's an incredible story. And again, it is this trying to have a conversation about racism, trying to really have these very uncomfortable conversations. Yet time and time again, it's interesting talking about Ben Simmons in the context of advertising, endorsements, and this argument that because you paid the money, you should just shut up and take it. And it's like, well, he's talking about racism. If he was victim to something, he should have every right to call it out and to talk about it. And we shouldn't be scared to have these uncomfortable conversations.
Well, that actually might turn out to be the most credible and effective celebrity endorsement of all, if actually he's doing it from a position of truth and speaking, his truth in the world and how he experiences it. So, Tilla, great to kick this around with you this morning.
Can I just ask before you go, is there anything you can do about that supermarket incident? Are you following it up?
To be honest, and this is the thing with what happens with racism, is that when it's very shocking when it happens because you're paranoid and you're just trying to deal with what's happening around you. But because the incident that happened yesterday was I'd been able to process what had happened early in the week, it allowed me to sort of use my power in some way to file a complaint and to follow it up within the institution. But a lot of things you just kind of just cop it on the chin and just keep moving and just hope that the more we have these conversations, the more people are aware that racism doesn't mean that you're a bad person or that you're bad intentioned. And that it is complicated, and we're dealing with a power structure, and it's been around for 400 plus years, and it's going to take a very, very long time to dismantle it. But we can't shy away from having these conversations. Good to have you on board, Tilla. Thanks so much. And Ricardo, great to see you as well. Join us again soon. Thanks, guys.
State and territory leaders have